What's up, dude?
How's it going, man?
A little bit of a headache, a little bit of a foggy brain. So if I'm slow on the mic, it seems like it's morning, but it's not really morning anymore. I woke up this morning, I was like, "What the fuck time is it?" Oh no, like one of those kinds of mornings. But yeah, ready to, obviously the show must go on, and
Indeed.
here we are.
Yeah, guys, we're coming to you this Saturday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in the country. Despite the fact that we did have a bit of a late night last night, as Zach just alluded to. But anyway, we're here. We're dedicated to bringing you guys the news and our commentary. So hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Obviously, this is the Vanguard. This guy thinks you have nice hair, Zach.
Whoop, whoop. The first one in the history of our channel. Normally, people have the opposite sentiment about our haircuts.
Yeah, exactly. Someone called us the Good Analysis Bad Hair channel one time.
Yeah, the Good Analysis Bad Haircut podcast. That was funny. That was a good one. We've also been called the Bill and Ted of the left before.
And the Jay and Silent Bob.
And the Jay and Silent Bob. Yeah. Of course, all those natural, low-hanging fruit things. But anyway, on with the news. Oh, wait, actually, on to our patrons.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks so much for that comment. By the way, we do have to get this van on the road. That's what we're working on fundraising for right now.
We're about 30 days out, it looks like, from taking the van on the road for a little bit of a test drive.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to head up to Colorado probably here within a month or two to make a little bit of a teaser trailer for you guys, a bit of a proof of concept to show you what's up and what's coming down the pipeline. Again, if you want to help support the effort, patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. You can also get access to our Discord server that way, in addition to some pretty cool other benefits, which you can find at that link. It's in the description. But yeah, super big shout out to everyone supporting the show. Obviously, you guys are all comrades to us, but like I said,
hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Gavin and I are not the best schedulers, so we always just kind of like on a whim or whatever, like what works for us, we kind of just go live. So it's really important, if you want to catch us when we're going live and want to chat with us, whatever, hit that subscribe button and then hit the bell so you get notified every time we go live, because YouTube loves to forget to remind people.
That is true. That is true. And yeah, thanks so much. We also do have a PayPal if you're wanting to donate and you don't want to, give a share to Google, understandably. We do have that option as well. So again, just a huge shout out. Obviously, if you're just watching or listening, that's totally fine. Just subscribing and liking.
We really are astonished and grateful about everybody that listens to this podcast. It really is truly a blessing to us, because But anyway, we like having these conversations, and so.
And thanks to Old Gringo for that super chat too. It's genuinely appreciated. And obviously, if you guys really want to catch our attention in the course of the live stream, probably the best way to do that. But again, thanks so much to all the supporters. Everyone helping to fuel our mission. But yeah, we can get into today's topics.
Another fucking cringy day of news for everybody to fucking sulk with, right? But at least we can, collectively commiserate, right? That's the one kind of solidarity we have left, is our commiseration. I kid mostly, but there is some painful truth in there.
Exactly. And welcome if anyone saw our segment last night on the Jimmy Dore show. We haven't seen it ourselves yet. Zach and I were out last night, but we'll check it out if he re-uploads that clip.
We're really hoping he does,
Yeah, exactly. And again, welcome to the channel if you're new. If you've never checked us out before, we're excited to have your support or viewership or whatever you want to call it. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Vanguard community. We have a lot of fun here, so stick around. But yeah, I guess something to start off with is this latest controversy surrounding Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who of course is just, pretty undeniably at this point just fallen from grace. Thanks for that super chat again, by the way. Super appreciated. Really, really helps. Thank you so much, Kate. Anyway, so AOC, of course, most people have realized by now the real nature of Ocasio-Cortez. Unfortunately, you and I were
swamp.
Yeah, exactly. You and I were both inspired by the squad members, and certainly AOC's election over Joe Crowley seemed at the time to be a real important shot across the bow in the leftist Democratic Party civil war. But unfortunately, when you go from being a working class person to making six figures, and you go from surrounding yourself with other working class people to surrounding yourself with literal elites in Washington D.C. I think it's proven time and time again to yield similar results. It turns people from fiery activists, fighters, truth tellers, into capitulators.
And we've seen that evidence so many fucking times, right? That and nobody, you can't keep giving these people any more chances, right? They have fucked up too many times. That's the deal, right? We put you in to represent us. You're not fucking doing it. You not only that, we covered this on our show. What was it, a week or 10 days ago? She took, and we even had Eva Pitsova, one of the potential challengers to a blue dog type Democrat that AOC used her donations to help facilitate to get them reelected, right? When there was a viable challenger that would actually be fighting for things like Medicare for all, actually fighting for things like a Green New Deal, actually fighting for things like First People's rights and Indigenous people's rights and that sort of thing. And she went ahead and gave the money. And not only that, she gave it to people who didn't even fucking want it. So talk about making yourself look fucking stupid, right? Giving out all this money, trying to win brownie points with the elite establishment swamp monsters, and then having them throw free money back at you. Say, no, I don't even want your fucking money. Because you know what? You're not on the same fucking team as them, AOC. You're an outsider to them that's trying to cuddle up with the fucking corporations. They don't want you because they know that they can get somebody that's going to not toe any fucking lines. And guess what? We don't want you anymore either because you fucking cuddled up to the people that you were supposed to go in there and excoriate.
Exactly. And again, the latest bit of controversy involving AOC, the latest round of, calling out, I guess, has occurred over this clip, which has surfaced from a Zoom town hall. I guess this was posted to her own YouTube channel. So it's not like this was leaked or something like that. But she comments on the Biden administration and talks a little bit about the way progressive expectations have been met or not met by Joe Biden. We can take a look and respond.
One thing that I will say is that I do think that the Biden administration and President Biden has definitely exceeded expectations that progressives had. I'll be frank. I think a lot of us expected a much more conservative administration. And I think that not only what has ultimately come out, but the active invitation and willingness and collaboration with progressives in his first 100 days, or almost 100 days, has been very impressive. And so while there are there are areas where there are just plain areas of disagreement, I think that the actual conduct of the administration has absolutely been in good faith, but not just in good faith, but active incorporation of progressive legislation. And also for those of us individually, I can at least say that there has been a lot of openness and willingness and flexibility in incorporating many of our goals, requests, demands, etc. And I think that it has been to the benefit.
What about $15 minimum wage? That literally the only request that we nominally got.
$2,000 checks.
Yeah, exactly. The whole reason Bernie Sanders supposedly endorsed Joe Biden was the $15 promise that was immediately discarded as soon as they had an excuse in the Parliamentarian. So, like if Biden had actually, enacted Medicare for all or, legalized cannabis and done a bunch of reforms and, sent out recurring checks, I wouldn't be opposed to giving him credit. It's not like we're just sitting here and like shitting on people no matter what they do. But when you don't do those very basic asks, when you don't fulfill those basic promises that, most of the country's on board with, why give someone credit for not even doing the bare minimum?
Well, it's not only that, she's completely gaslighting everything that's happened, right? Before they were talking about how he was going to be this most progressive president ever, that he was going to be a potential new FDR, and that's what everybody was rallying behind. Everybody was pushing, oh, you have to vote for Joe Biden. And so AOC she's the ultimate flip-flopper, right? First, she's like, we shouldn't even be in the same party as Joe Biden. Then she's like, oh, we have to get behind Joe Biden and unify, and he's going to be really progressive, and you guys just wait. We're going to hold him accountable. We're going to push him really far to the left. What about the fucking kids in cages, AOC? How have their fucking first 100 days been? What about all the kids that are cramped in like fucking sardines in a can, haven't been outside in fucking days, sleeping on the ground away from their parents? How have their first 100 days been? What the fuck is the matter with you? I can't believe this shit. It's offensive to me. It's absurd to me. It feels like I'm watching an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, it's a complete spit in the face to the kind of progressive activist ethos that got her elected in the first place, settling for the lesser of two evils, settling for corporate Democrats, pushing incrementalist change on a neoliberal administration is not enough. And that it does facilitate the rise of far right faux populists like Donald Trump. That's exactly what she correctly identified, and what a lot of people correctly identified in the kind of original days of the strategy, when we were thinking about trying to send progressive, non-corrupt candidates to representative positions. That was the thinking, and it's just insane how much her tune has changed. Don't feel crazy if it seems like she's totally changed her tune, because she definitely has. Again, you just referenced the infamous. Yeah, exactly. You just referenced the moment where she explicitly said it's crazy that in America, someone like her and someone like Joe Biden have to be in the same political party, the Democratic Party. Now, less than a year later, she's basically running defense for the Biden administration and saying, despite all of these glaring red flags, ignore your lying eyes, essentially, and just trust me, because now I'm an insider and I'm telling you that he's accommodating me and my friends, even though that's not really manifesting in any significant sense. And yeah, thank you for meeting the moment of coronavirus by passing a large, multi-trillion-dollar relief
Well, they're not
bill.
meeting the moment of coronavirus. I don't even want to give him that credit. I don't want to give him that credit, because here's the thing. And actually,
hold on, let me finish. I'm just saying, as far as rolling out vaccines, as far as, doing more than Obama did to stimulate the economy, there's no doubt that, there has been a little bit of incremental progress, but those are band-aids on a systemic systemic issues which have been laid extremely bare by the pandemic. Things like lack of medical insurance. If you really want to meet the pandemic head on, you would have to fix that crisis, not just put a Band-Aid on it, not just send out one-time checks, actually institute a UBI or something like that to put an actual serious, Band-Aid, or not a Band-Aid, but a real fix on this problem.
Yeah, and the one thing I just wanted to point out is that we're going to be in this coronavirus problem for so long. So yes, it's important to point out that Donald Trump did such a horrible fucking job that it looks like Joe Biden has come in here and saved the fucking day. But one of the more insightful things I think that Noam Chomsky pointed out to us when we interviewed him was when he said that we're shooting ourselves in the foot unless we are going to get the global south completely vaccinated alongside us, because there's just going to be new mutations of the virus that our vaccines won't cure. And so then we're going to have to deal with these waves even over a vaccinated population. And that's what I think is going to become the most long-term critique of the Biden administration and all of Western leadership in general, is this hoarding of vaccines amongst wealthy countries. Because even while it seems like a good idea to make sure that your people have vaccines because they'll protect you, it's strategically fundamentally flawed, not to mention extremely odious, to deprive the third and developing the world of these vaccines, not just because it's completely immoral and it's a death sentence for those people, and we have a responsibility as human beings to take care of one another, but also because it will mutate the vaccine, or it will mutate the virus, and our vaccines will become ineffective.
Yeah, and it's just crazy that someone like AOC doesn't spend more time pointing that out, bringing attention to that fact, bringing more attention to the failings of capitalism during this time when it comes to essential fields like medicine, where it's proven that privatization and for-profit medicine has not come in handy at all when it comes to facilitating the distribution. It's just crazy that she's gone from being supposedly the left flank of the Democratic Party, the insurgent, firebrand there to call out the establishment, to now she's literally defending them, trying to say, oh, as a representative of the progressive movement, it's all good. You don't need to worry. We got this. Biden is accommodating us. He's listening to us, when he very clearly is not. So basically, she's putting the movement to sleep, just like Obama did. You know what I'm saying?
It kind of reminds me what Ben Burgess pointed out with his everything's all mostly okay parade that Jon Stewart and What's-Him-Face did.
Yeah, exactly. And these are the people that were talking about how we had to vote for Joe Biden and then push him left. Again, I wasn't even of that school of thought in the first place, but someone like AOC was. She thought it was actually possible and that we needed to do that. What happened? Has he been pushed to the left enough? No. Are there people that are there still uninsured people? Yes.
Massive amounts of them.
And whatever happened to abolish ICE? Whatever happened to kids in cages? These were her favorite things to talk about back in the Trump era. You hardly hear a peep about it now. And when she does talk about it, it's like in a polite, civil, 10-minute long GQ interview that no one watched. You know what I'm saying?
And mostly celebratory, talking about how there are no more children being ripped from their mother's arms. It's like, okay, great. There's still a bunch of them sleeping on the fucking ground when they can't go outside and go anywhere. They're still being targeted, but there's so many examples of children in detention centers being abused, and no accountability happening. I mean, this is very like villainous kind of shit, and to just completely ignore it or gaslight people who are talking about it. I mean, it really does change the way that you look at these people, and it does. I mean, I think that the name Swamp Monster is going to be one that she earns over her next, term.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really telling the way AOC acts come 2024, when the Democratic Party is going to be doing everything possible to prevent any sort of a leftist insurgent challenge to Biden/Harris, whoever will take on the mantle and run in 2024. Because mark my words, guys, they're going to try to lock down the primary 2016 style. They're going to try to make sure that it's like Biden, and then if anyone else is on stage, it's like some complete irrelevant, nobody that's not going to get anywhere. They don't want anyone with clout, anyone with celebrity or popularity that actually can speak to issues challenging their administration. And I think it's going to be really telling to see what tune people like AOC are singing at that point, because anything less than a complete full-throated rejection and challenge of what's currently going on, it is unacceptable. But I think we all know that that's exactly what's coming, unfortunately. Thanks for that super chat, David. But yeah, I just think we can only expect more capitulation going forward. There've been multiple moments now where people like AOC could have actually exerted their leverage to get more influence or to get actual tangible policy concessions. And so far, each and every one has been squandered. And instead, they've resorted to basically defending the Democratic neoliberal establishment of Joe Biden rather than challenging it more often than not. And when they do challenge it, it's on Twitter. It's not really. There's no
not on C-SPAN on the floor of the House, fucking making a stand.
Or they're not going on, MSNBC to educate all these people, all these Biden bros out there, whatever you want to call them, about what's actually going on. Because that would actually be really beneficial if someone like AOC, someone who used to have these leftist values, went on a platform like AOC to explain to people what's going on. MSNBC, to explain to people, what's going on, to explain how Biden is actually falling short of this, again, progressive vision that was promised to us by the media, by people like MSNBC, like you said, the new FDR bullshit. Someone like her needs to go out there and explain how he's completely and utterly falling short of that, how this moment calls for New Deal style reforms, and instead he's basically just doing a one shot of adrenaline to, get everyone back up and running for a couple months, put some money on the table, which of course is good, but it's not permanent and where it needs to be. Obviously we're permanently fueling money into the military industrial complex and
Wall Street, all this kind of shit. Yeah. And what they're going to do is they're going to be like, what? We gave everybody the money that they must have used it irresponsibly. They must have, that's what happens if you bought a fucking PlayStation instead of fucking paying your rent, people. Oh man, these poor people, they just need to learn how to spend their money better. All these dumb poor people in America, right? Because if you were smart, you'd be rich.
And you know what else pisses me off? Like, I was just thinking about this. In light of seeing this latest defense of the Biden administration from AOC, I'm like, we just passed 420. You know who's one of the fucking incarcerators one of the architects of our mass incarceration and of the drug war is the guy who's currently president right now. And he unilaterally decided to take legalizing cannabis out of the Democratic Party platform. It's why it's still not legal. It's why there's still so many goddamn people in jail for this fucking drug. Why hasn't any of the progressives been talking about this, especially progressives that claim to care about kids in cages? You know how many young fucking black men have spent their entire fucking, half their lives in jail for drug crimes? People literally going away at 17 and shit. It's fucking crazy. Why do you not care about those people in cages? Like,
yeah, those are also kids in cages, right? And it's so fucking true. And think about this, guys. Like, I mean, the bail system in this fucking country, and people don't talk about it enough in a real serious way, but think about it this way. Say you get pulled over and you weren't able to pay your fucking traffic ticket, right? And so they take you to jail. You can either pay the like fucking $1,000 or whatever it is to get out right there, or they will keep you in that cage for 14 fucking days, guys. 14 days until your court appearance. for a fucking traffic violation. Can you imagine? That's what we do in this country.
Yeah.
And if you remember, that was a big part of the conversation in Ferguson, because that's how they preyed upon people there a lot, with so many people who would give people tickets for everything. That was how the police were funding themselves. And then when these obviously impoverished area of people couldn't afford these draconian imposition of fucking parking violation, speeding, all these kinds of shit that are not crimes if you're rich, but are crimes if you're poor, essentially. That's how they kept people locked up. That's how they kept people in the system. That's how they kept people under their thumb, under their boot, and that's the way it's fucked up.
And is it just me that's like, it seems like no one cares about the fact that Joe Biden unilaterally took legalizing cannabis off of the Democratic Party platform. So, literally the entire party was on board with it. Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, everyone was on board with this policy until this regressive ass piece of shit has to take over and decide that we can't have nice things and that people have to stay in jail for smoking a plant, that he was a big part of the reason why, the fucking drug war is so vicious and was so destructive and continues to be. So it's just crazy how we don't see more pushback from the nominal progressives who, again, claim to care so much about this kind of stuff, or at least at one point did. Thanks so much for that super chat, David.
100%, dude. That's the way you claw yourself up to the top in this country. It's so sad, because all of the things that you have to participate in to continue to grow and make money. I mean, with various, obviously there are ways to make money and become personally affluent if you're not, not without participating, but without like necessarily harming people. But if you want to become one of the dons of power, as they say, then yeah, of course you have to. You're just going to have to be at least capitulate to the demands of the system, which is to pursue capital at all costs, squash any opposition at all costs, etc., etc.
Exactly. And to stay on this same theme, and just to kind of illustrate how everyone is waking up, at this point, everyone is coming to terms with the nature of AOC in specific, but really the Justice Democrats at large and that whole model.
Because they all followed her lead.
Yeah, exactly. But to illustrate that, I thought it would be interesting to play a clip from a recent episode of Kyle, Krystal, and Friends, the podcast hosted by Kyle Kulinski and Krystal Ball. It was the episode in which they were talking to Professor Richard Wolff. But before they talked to him, they got into the 2024 potential crop of Democrats, who could potentially run and who could potentially take the mantle of kind of the progressive that I was talking about to challenge Harris and Biden and to kind of mount that resistance. And obviously AOC came up, who hilariously is polling at 2% in the polls for 2024, which I think is indicative of the fact that people, by the way, AOC, actually like it when you put up a fight and like it when you resist the establishment. They don't want to see you capitulate. That's actually not popular. So why do you think your popularity has been plummeting? Put two and two together. How stupid are you? But anyway, the point is that they're talking about this, and it just struck me with the nature that they discussed it, because at this point it's just almost completely, I guess, I don't know if dismissive is the right word, but yeah, you'll see.
Shout out to Marta K, Old Gringo, and the Social Historian for the super chats, by the way. Thank you, or the super stickers.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate that. And yeah, we do need a government of action to fight for working families. Absolutely correct. And damn straight, man. 100%. But yeah, back to this.
Mm-hmm.
You think that
here we go.
You've gotten through the list of the worst people by now, right? Mm-hmm. You've gotten Kamala, Pete, Amy, but then lo and behold, the next one on the list is John Kerry at 7%.
The guy who lost to George W. Bush after George W. Bush was already president for 4 years.
Yeah, we're thinking about him again. Didn't work last.
John Kerry versus Mitt Romney. Let's go. 2024.
Remember when John Kerry was going to jump in to save everybody from the miserable performance of Joe Biden? And that was like the talk of the town. It was like, is John Kerry going to save us all? It's like, John Kerry is a fucking disgusting piece of shit. I don't want to talk about him anymore.
And honestly, the fact that John Kerry is at 7%, this poll does kind of make me question this poll. Like, what were you polling people that lived in the 2-block vicinity of Washington or the White House and the Capitol? Talk to your average person. They're not very inspired, or let alone even know who the fuck John Kerry is at this point. But
he supported the Iraq war,
and lost to George Bush miserably
while he was running for president too.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Anyway,
Maybe this time. You never know. He's a lot older and a lot less relevant.
It's like
so
they're
let's go
trying
for
to
it.
lose. So I see nobody I can even tolerate.
All
I
right.
don't see Yang. I don't see Ellison.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody that I
Next,
like even to a little bit.
next you get into like the progressives. Next is Warren at 3%. Bernie at 2%. I mean, Bernie's it's over. I mean,
I know.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it is what it is. What are you gonna do?
And then AOC at 2%. So there you go.
By the way,
look, this
shame on her for plummeting to 2%, blowing all of the name recognition. She had potential. Had. Stress had.
2% is really pathetic.
It is.
For someone who
pathetic.
is, I mean,
And 70 zillion Twitter followers and all this media and
everyone in the country knows who she is. Everyone in the
Everybody
country knows who
knows
she
now.
is.
That's
And
right.
look, it's partly not her fault because she, Fox News and the right decided to demonize her. Democratic establishment decided to throw her under the bus is like the emblem of what we can never do if we want to get elected. But part of it is also, I think, she's kind of played into that caricature. And
I haven't seen her lean into the right issues more than like once or twice in her entire time in office.
Yeah.
All the ones where she gets aggressive and she leans in are all like fringe stuff that does not appeal to the majority of Americans.
I mean, look, and I agree with her on virtually every issue, but yeah, that she likes to lean into the things that are edgy.
Not popular, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Good job. You're a fucking politician.
The brand is to be like about the things that aren't popular. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of the brand she's created.
Right.
And by the way, I'll say, I defended AOC back in the day when she was super hardcore abolish ICE and when she was talking about defund the police and stuff. Even though those aren't necessarily majoritarian issues yet, someone has to popularize and explain them. So, I defended her for repping.
She's not even really
those
fighting
issues.
for those things.
That's what I'm saying. What's maddening is that now she can't even have any consistency when there's a Democrat in office. She can't even talk about abolishing ICE. ICE still fucking exists. Why aren't you talking about abolishing it? Like, why aren't you talking about defund the police? We literally have two of the most, sympathetic motherfuckers in the White House right now to the police state.
The top cop of California and the architect of the crime bill.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how the issue is not even necessarily that she's taken on unpopular issues, because I have respect for people that champion issues that they feel strongly about, and again try to elevate causes that may not already be in the mainstream. But to do that and then to change your tune as soon as you clearly want access to more power and you want more brownie points from the liberal establishment which surrounds you, like, that lack of consistency is what I truly find infuriating. But they are correct, too, that with that name recognition and with that popularity and celebrity, she really could have used it to further and be fierce on a lot more issues that were also more majoritarian, more populist, issues that she wouldn't have had to put in so much work to try to explain.
Like Medicare for all.
Exactly. Like fucking Medicare for all, which again, the crisis is not over. Just because like Bernie Sanders lost the presidency doesn't mean we all go home.
Everybody gave up. Everybody that was elected gave up. They were like, we don't give a fuck about any of this anymore. This is on the back burner. Like, all we can do is build our careers up essentially for 4 more fucking years. Like, what the fuck is the point of doing that? Well, people need this shit yesterday. We needed this 10 fucking 20 years ago, guys. Like, this country is fucking a mess. We don't have 20 years. The earth doesn't have 20 more fucking years, guys. This is absurd. We need the urgency that she used to have, and she clearly sold it out. She sold her urgency for fucking fake power, for the horseshit fucking pacification, and get in a committee seat, keep making in the bread, like keep getting a bunch of people send you heart emojis when you go live on Insta. Like, okay, live in that world and don't get anything fucking done. I mean, it's pathetic, but that's what we're looking at.
Yep. And another issue that this reminds me of was when, around the same time as Force the Vote, she put out that tweet afterwards in regards to impeaching Trump, where she basically explained the logic about why, people needed to take a bold stand. And even if it was all for naught, it was important to have that record. And it's like, what is going on? Why are you more focused on this issue, which clearly is not going to result in anything meaningful or tangible, instead of exerting that same kind of energy and pressure towards something that is achievable, that does have an end goal? And by the way, that end goal is literally saving people's lives, not just fucking scoring brownie points and virtue signaling about how anti-Trump you are, when you're not even talking about the real solution to the issue, which was to, I believe it was invoking the 14th Amendment impeachment to prevent him from even running again, which would have only taken 50 votes, not 60. So, it was a dumb waste of time. Everyone knew it. She went right along with that. I mean, she never said anything about that. So I think that's a perfect example of what they're talking about. Obviously following January 6th, people were not fond of Donald Trump, but it's telling that's impeaching Trump was the cause that she jumped on to put her fire behind,
because corporations aren't going to fucking get mad at her about it. Nancy Pelosi wasn't going to get mad at her about it. They were going to cheerlead her for that. They were going to amplify her for that, and it didn't cost her anything. And that's the thing. She doesn't want to spend any kind of political capital that's going to disrupt the mama bear.
Exactly. And it also while we're calling people out, I will say I've been very disappointed in someone who just a few months ago I was singing the praises of and talking about how inspired I was. Cori Bush, she came into Congress saying, I'm going to get there and I'm going to start fighting for recurring checks, not just recurring checks, but retroactive checks. Where's the fire been on that, man? From what I've seen for Cori Bush so far is that she was really intent on getting Marjorie Taylor Greene out of office and Josh Hawley, which I agreed with, honestly. I thought that what they did was beyond the pale and it was worthy of expulsion. But again, she put a lot more fight into that. She raised a lot more of a ruckus on that issue than she ever did checks or Medicare or even the Green New Deal, which she supposedly just reintroduced with AOC to no fanfare, no press, no protest. It's not like they organized a adjacent protest in DC to help bring attention to the issue. No, they just quietly introduced this bill so it can die. I mean, what's the point of that? It's not activism. It's just a charade.
Yeah, and that's what sucks, and that does hurt a little bit because obviously, we had a lot of hope going in for a lot of this. I mean, we don't want to, get ahead, put the cart before the horse, sure. But we've both talked behind the scenes about how neither of us have been particularly moved by the rhetoric that's been coming from the Nina Turner campaign for, in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it is the fact that when people start running for Congress, they start to pacify themselves. They start to try and play the game. They try and do all this kind of thing. And when you have a background like somebody like Nina Turner does of being a fiery, impassioned orator, of somebody who's going to call a spade, of somebody who's going to, torch somebody if they deserve to be torched, etc. Right. You start to feel a little less authentic when you kind of tone yourself down, when you stop giving people fire, right? Like, if one day you guys turn on the Vanguard and I'm sitting here in like a suit and tie and I'm never getting moved or upset about anything, you're just like, something is fucking wrong, dude. You don't give a shit about this anymore. You're not like being yourself. You're not like being authentic anymore. That's what you think. Like when Gavin and I have reactions on this shit, it's because it's what the fuck we actually think and feel. And if we were to like do a 180 from that one day, people have followed us for a long time would be like, what the fuck are you guys doing? This is a change. And the same thing is true for politicians, right? And when they change their tune, when they change their level of fieriness or whatever, when they pacify themselves, essentially, it's telling and it's a bummer. And I think it's indicative of what might be to come. So I'm not saying like, if you're in her district, don't vote for her, because it's certainly probably better than whatever fuck she's running against. I haven't paid close attention to that race. Honestly, we're still a ways out, but I mean, yeah, is what it is.
No, I think that's well said and very accurate. And a lot of people probably feel the same way. And again, one of my favorite Nina Turner quotes of all time was when she said, we have to slay the dragon of neo-fascism, but we also have to slay the dragon of neoliberalism, because one facilitates the other. And I just feel like that sentiment isn't being expressed anymore by these people. Like, where's your acknowledgement of the fact that this corrupt corporate duopoly is what's perpetuating these inequalities, these horrors, all of these things that we're against. It just seems like once people, join the system or the establishment, they, it seems it's obvious,
deep in the swamp water, and they become the swamp monsters in their own right? It's like a fucking Batman villain. You fall into the pit of fucking nuclear waste, and you come out a fucking villain. Essentially, it doesn't matter who you are going in. And I was even a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain, kid. Yeah,
exactly. And I was actually talking with your girlfriend yesterday, Zach, about this. And I was kind of talking about how like people like AOC and Cori Bush and stuff like that, I'm almost starting to view them in a very different way. I'm almost starting to view them as like, and obviously not to make this direct comparison, but like someone like a John Lewis, who obviously came from a background of real activism, right? But then he became a politician, and it's not like he you know, it's not like we go around saying like, oh, John Lewis is a fucking sellout piece of shit or whatever, but he certainly did join the establishment rather than continue to resist it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like he was the worst of the worst, but you can't deny that he was there, and it's not like he was there to resist it. He was participating in it, you know, let's be honest. And it's the same thing that's happened with Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib and all these people that did come from genuine places and real, you know, activist backgrounds, and they had the right ideas. And I think if anything, it's just a study on the way human nature works and how malleable we are, you know, despite how entrenched you may believe you are in your beliefs. These kind of, you know, external pressures can really change people's thinking. And I think it's just incumbent on politicians that are running to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, don't think you're above that. You know, don't think that can't happen to you. And that's why I think tactics like the socialist alternative has been brilliant, where they literally, you know, make you have a working person's salary. I think it's like $40,000 a year, you know, and the rest is dues to the organization. You know, that keeps you in line and in the mindset of a working class person. But when you're making six figures, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to have the same kind of urgency to working people. And that's not to say there aren't rich people that do, you know, really good activism and that advocate for great stuff. Of course there are, you know, like Susan Sarandon and shit, you know, she's one of our fucking patrons. But I do think it's true that, you know, when you're of that echelon, you simply aren't going to, you know, see things the same way. I don't think that's
I mean, it's the same as anything, right? Like I mean, there are so many things that Gavin and I empathize with that we do not understand completely, right? Like, you know, oftentimes Gavin and I, well, but just to be honest, we were talking about this the other day. Like, oftentimes Gavin and I aren't trans people, but we often feel like we want to make sure that we're always sticking up for that community that gets shit on all the time and, you know, attacked and vilified and smeared and all kinds of shit, right? But it's also, you know, we don't have that lived experience, right? I don't know what it is like to be trans. I don't know what it's like to live my life like that, to be judged by people. I don't know what kind of courage it takes to outwardly present in a world that, you know, tries to shame you for it, all these kinds of things. But I try and empathize with that. And so that's the, you know, of course you're capable of doing that, but you have to consciously do it. And you also have to maintain the fact that I could never do a good job advocating for trans rights as somebody who has those lived experiences. And that's something that you have to reckon with, right? And so it's important to know where the line is. And obviously, oftentimes that line is blurred. Like, are you trying to stick up for somebody, or are you inserting yourself into an argument where you don't belong? You know, those are the kind of balance, nuanced things that you have to kind of try and consider when you're in this like commentary base, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I also feel like something that I try to avoid is I try to avoid speaking on the behalf of a community, which I'm not a part of. You know what I mean? Like, I will defend your rights and try to express the viewpoint of that community. But I'm not going to, like, you know, speak on their behalf. Right. Exactly. I'd rather have a trans person on the show to make that case than try to sit here and pretend like I understand that experience when I fully do not. You know, I try to, but there's only so much there's only so much insight you can really have as a cis person in this country, even if you do have trans friends, which I do.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, another thing I wanted to quickly react to and talk about, because these are two things that are going on concurrently. Obviously yesterday, Caitlyn Jenner, speaking of trans folks, Caitlyn Jenner basically filed the paperwork to run for governor of California, which, as we were talking about, is a complete publicity stunt. I doubt that it'll go anywhere. Caitlyn Jenner is not as charismatic and likable as someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, nor does she really even have any involvement in politics at all. Like, you know, Schwarzenegger, before he was even technically a politician, he still was kind of a political thinker. You know, he would go on, like, you know, Fox News and stuff like that. Like, he was kind of someone that people still went to for political philosophy, or I don't know why, but, you know, he had one foot in that door. You know, Caitlyn Jenner is literally, you know, an ex-athlete who's now basically a reality TV star who's now trying to become a politician. So it's not really
been remarkably unpopular every time they shared their political outlook, because to be frank, you know, they're fiscally very conservative in their politics, and people who typically adopt a very hard line. I'm not saying everybody, right? There are obviously, you know, social libertarians that also adopt, like somebody like Spike Cohen doesn't give a fuck if you're trans, obviously, but would be a capitalist thinker. But I'm just saying the Republican Party writ large isn't. I hope to say that the trans element of you know, their identity would not be an issue, but I do worry that the party is not as evolved on that when you look at the reality of the situation. Not that would
Oh, they're
is
not.
something
They're
that
definitely
should
not.
hold them back. Obviously, my criticisms of Caitlyn Jenner are the fact that the policy is terrible. She does not support defunding the police. She does not support, the socialist policies that I do. Obviously, those kinds of things are important. But I just mean from an electoral standpoint, that is going to be a hurdle for her.
Yeah, and also, like I said, I genuinely just don't think she's likable or charismatic enough to win.
She also killed somebody and got off. She pulled a Matthew Broderick.
100%. And generally, I just don't think it's going anywhere. But the other day on the show, someone who I did compare to Arnold Schwarzenegger and who I did say have a chance of winning was Matthew McConaughey. Again, he's obviously very charismatic guy. If you've seen any movie he's in, you know that. Weirdly, I've been paying attention to McConaughey, kind of his public presence online and stuff. And I have to take it back. I do not think Matthew McConaughey is nearly as compelling or charismatic of a public presence as I predicted he would be in this kind of a role. In fact, it's really coming off as awkward as fuck and extremely out of touch so far. Every time I've seen him put out a clip or put out a statement, it comes off as if he's like I don't know, man.
Pandering?
Yeah, pandering, but also like he's just out of touch and doesn't really know what to say or what to do. And he's just like pretending to run for something or pretending to gear up.
Yeah, dude, he's trying to give his life meaning because he's rich as fuck and he has a bunch of money and he's like, all right, what's going on now?
And also, like, I am not the kind of guy that says that at all thinks politicians need to be, wearing suits and ties or whatever. But this dude literally looks like he just shopped at fucking American Eagle and is showing up to his first day at high school or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, he looks like he's trying to dress like a fucking high school.
Hi, kids. I'm one of you.
Yeah. Like,
he looks like he's in a Levi's fucking commercial right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to play this to just demonstrate what I'm talking about. Because again, currently Matthew McConaughey is like 10 points ahead of the incumbent governor in Texas. So he's certainly seemingly the front runner.
And I think it's just an indictment of our celebrity culture, right? Our deification of all people who are a known quantity.
I also think it's an indictment of the establishment politicians like Greg Abbott, who opened the door for people like Matthew McConaughey to come in. I think
both of those things are true.
With absolutely no substance and still win a race based on your personality. Because, if there was a really strong and popular governor who had actually done right by the people, I don't think a challenge like this would be nearly as possible, right?
No.
If Greg Abbott wasn't just some fucking milquetoast, fucking sellout piece of shit, then, someone like Matthew McConaughey couldn't just come in here so easily and be like, I'm the new governor. You know what I'm saying?
I'm a new sheriff.
So I think it's also really an indictment of just how bad our politicians are, and how for granted that's taken. But just take a look at this, because this is just a short clip he posted to Twitter. So I'm not trying to like overanalyze it or whatever. But like, if this is at all a preview of what we have to expect from a McConaughey political agenda or whatever, then count me the fuck out, man, because I am so sick of this kind of fucking rhetoric.
Best I can tell is the common denominator that is bipartisan, that can be scaled across humanity, is values. You can be whatever color, shape, size you want to be, but we all need to share a common set of values. Let's be fair to each other. Let's be friendly. Let's be optimistic. Let's be respectful to ourselves, respectful to other people. Let's be accountable. Let's not lie, cheat, and steal. Let's look after ourselves. Let's look after each other. We're all writing our own book, Every like or dislike or thing we send out or thing we choose not to send out or share, it's being recorded. What book are we writing, I guess is the question.
Values. He thinks he's so insightful. It's like a weird like mix of cliches and like inspirational speech.
Dude,
cliche,
it's like he fucking it's like he auditioned for a role where he was gonna play like Tony Robbins or some shit, and then he was like got a lot of that shit floating around, and he's like, let me tell you about something that we all share. Values. And let's be kind to one another. Let's be respectful to ourselves and to others. Let's be good, folks. Why don't we all agree on that? What's wrong with that? Let's just get back to the good. Let's get back to the good. All right.
Doesn't he come off as weirdly kind of like out of it and uncharismatic for someone who does come off as very.
I think he's trying to play a character that's like very like chin strokey, because I think he's definitely approaching this like an actor, which I think is really interesting to watch from a sociological perspective. Like he is playing the part of somebody who's running for office in his mind, I think, and so he's trying to behave like somebody that he thinks the people want to see. That's the way I'm reacting to this.
Because
I think that
he comes off like he's just like he's not even looking at the camera. This does not come off as someone running for office to me. It comes off as just someone mumbling in their room.
He's completely delusional. But what he thinks the people want is somebody who's reasonable. He thinks what people want is somebody who's going to say these things as if like nobody's ever thought or said these things before, because he's so in his own space. So he's like, why doesn't somebody just run for office and just like tell people that we should all love each other and get along and be friends and respect each other? It don't matter what size, shape, color you are, as long as you don't fuck with taking my money and let me keep making all the money I want to make.
Also, that size, shape, color comment reminded me of that like cliche that you always hear like low-key racist people say, where they're like, I don't care if you're purple, brown, yellow, green, or orange. I love every. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude, it's hella cringy.
It has that same vibe. But I don't know, man. Like I really expected him to come out here with some more like Matthew McConaughey Texas energy and be like and make more of a case for anti-partisanship, because there is a case to be made for that. We have Democrats, we have Republicans, and neither of them are representing the will of the people. Why don't we have legal weed? Why don't we have universal health care? You can run that kind of campaign and make a cogent argument using that kind of language, but this is completely substanceless. It's just like, we got to stick to our values and be empathetic, and like we got to treat each other better. It's like, well, you're not going to be able to affect that change.
This dude makes Cory Booker's speeches look dense.
Again, and you're not going to be able to affect that kind of change as governor. As a governor, you have the power to affect policy change, not this kind of like ephemeral, cultural, societal, value-based bullshit. Like, that's not what a governor does. You're literally passing policies which are either helping people or hurting people. So are you going to hurt people or are you going to fucking help people? Like, what's policies do you support? What's your agenda? What do you like? What's your economic philosophy? Are you a fucking libertarian? Are you a socialist? Which way do you lean? These are the kind of things you would want to know, not just, I think everyone should be nice to each other. Like,
I like good people and I don't like bad people. All right.
And seemingly so far, the strongest political stance he's taken is that he's in favor of wearing masks. He was like going around during the pandemic and doing some like pro mask events, which I guess is a radical stance in Texas. But like, I don't know, man, that's not a very impressive bar to me. Like, I mean, good job. You agree with the basic medical consensus. And I'm not going to celebrate that.
It's kind of like Andrew Yang when he had that super cringy moment when he was like, gay people are so human. It's like, as opposed to fucking what, guy? Like, oh, what the fuck else would they be? Dogs? Monkeys? What the fuck is the matter with you? Get the fuck away from me. Like, it's again, that like weird, you're trying to like say something that's insightful and like would play well at like a Google fucking conference in Andrew Yang's mind. And yet you're like, oh yeah, these people are so warm and human. And it's just like, okay, like, yes, that should go without saying. Like, it pisses me off that you said that, because that's like a given. Like, next you're going to tell me that like immigrants are humans too. Like,
right. Anyway, I guess the main takeaway from this, and it's something I've been noticing, not just in this video, but in others too, is that McConaughey is just a much more awkward campaigner or politician than I ever would have expected. Again, coming from a charismatic actor, someone who's undeniably, a hell of a on-screen presence. It just really does blow my mind how unnatural and out of touch this is coming off. And it does lead me to believe that he's going to end up squandering that 10-point lead he currently has. Because, I mean, if this continues, they're absolutely going to be able to paint him as an out of touch celebrity, which he is, to be fair. So, again, if you're not going to embrace actual policies and champion, populist issues, again, why the fuck aren't you talking about legalizing cannabis? Aren't you you're like one of the biggest icons in stoner culture. Why aren't you talking about how, the Republicans and Democrats, we all want this and the government?
Why are you talking about the fact that your entire fucking state lost power?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, man. Obviously, it's not like I'm sitting here saying like, oh, Matthew McConaughey is disappointing me. I had really high hopes for this campaign or whatever. All I'm saying is that when I heard that he was running, my initial reaction was, oh, well, he's definitely going to win because Matthew McConaughey is likable as fuck. And, he's Matthew McConaughey. But it just really has been surprising to the extent to which he's kind of failed to generate any sort of a charismatic or any substance at all in his campaign so far. So I'm interested to see how that goes. We're going to keep roasting it for sure if it continues in this vein. Yeah. But but certainly something to keep an eye on. And again, I just can't get over his fucking fashion choices either. Like if you look at him in other videos and photos too, it's
Looks
so
like he's on the prowl for some high school girls, man.
It does like he looks
high
like
school girls.
he looks like he's perpetually going through a middle life crisis or something, like which is just the opposite of what's projected on screen when he acts in a film. Like I don't know.
He had the Mcconaughey, and then people started to take him seriously, but it seems like he's regressed into more of that rom-com brain.
I guess.
McConaughey.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, although I did love The Beach Bum by Harmony Korine.
Oh, amazing! I think he's a great actor. I don't give a shit that his but he doesn't. You're right. It does not translate.
No, not at all. So I'll be interested to see how that continues. I'm sure he'll be, if he actually declares his run, I'm sure it'll get better than that. I mean, he'll have to run on something. He can't literally just be like values and that's it. But we'll see.
Salad, but we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. One other thing I did want to talk about before we get onto our book club segment was a bit of a face plant, honestly, from someone.
Swing and a miss from Glenn.
Yeah, from someone we both admire. And I know this is a little bit painful for some people watching because a lot of people, have a lot of respect for Glenn Greenwald, myself included, Zach included. And, no shade to his journalism. He does great work and I still consume it. That being said, I think that Glenn Greenwald would do himself a huge favor to himself and his work if he just stopped trying to be such a fucking provocateur or contrarian or whatever, because I know that's what he's trying to be. Well, and hold on one sec, because I'm also a fucking provocateur and a contrarian. My entire life, I've also had those same instincts. So I can't say I don't understand it to some extent. But as someone who wants to have their journalism taken seriously, it really genuinely blows my mind how someone like Glenn Greenwald continues to make a fool of himself in public. And that's not to say that he's wrong about everything. I think he's really correct about a lot of things. And we've defended him on the show multiple times, but it's statements like these, which I'm about to play, that are making it a lot harder to keep defending him. And it's unfortunate, I think, for both of us, right, Zach?
Yeah, and the one thing that I did want to say, I think that part of this is actually something that I think I just didn't notice about Glenn, because actually that book that you have on your shelf right there, if you read the back of it, it actually talks about how before Glenn started his blog and before he started reporting on like the security, the deep state, he's one of those guys that considered himself to be like a firm constitutionalist. He didn't see himself as a Republican or a Democrat, and he thought that the United States was generally on the right path. That is a complete misunderstanding of both American history, the system that we operate under, and whatever. And I think that as he kind of, exposed a lot of things, we naturally kind of assumed that he would take issue with a lot of the other things that you and I take issue with. Mm-hmm. And while, of course, Gavin and I don't support tech censorship. We don't support, a deep state, obviously. And a lot of things that Glenn, his excellent reporting on Lula da Silva in Brazil and The Intercept. So, of course, Gavin and I have tremendous respect for Glenn Greenwald. But I wasn't as surprised to see this take after reading some of his books, because the way that he describes himself as is like almost like an old school, like constitutional worshiper.
Okay, well, that is good context, and that's important to know. There's a few cringy statements, though, in my opinion, in the course of this clip. Not just the comment concerning the Electoral College, but we'll react. And for people asking, he went on Glenn Beck's show, so that's where this conversation was facilitated. Take that for what you will. But yeah, take a look at what he has to say. I certainly found the framing to be interesting.
They don't believe in due process. They find people guilty all the time. Look at what they're doing to Matt Gaetz now. I'm not saying Matt Gaetz is, not guilty. He may be guilty of everything that he's being accused of and more. But thus far, there's been no evidence presented of any kind, and they have him convicted and locked up as a pedophile. The whole Me Too movement was about destroying people based on accusations that are unproven. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in due process. They don't believe in just the standard democratic processes, including the safeguards that our founders put in, including making sure that states that are small and rural have equal representation in the Senate, but not the House, so that they don't get they want to change all of that. They want to change all of the rules to ensure that they remain in power forever. It is a genuinely repressive and tyrannical party and a movement that supports it. And it's the reason I've become so violently alienated from it.
So obviously, for people who aren't picking up, he's taking a shot at people who, one, don't agree with the fact that everybody should, the Senate should be dramatically skewed to overrepresent people who live in states with low population like Wyoming, and also, by extension, the call to reform the Electoral College. Those are both the things that he's taking issue with here, essentially giving the straw man argument that people who live in Wyoming or Idaho or somewhere, Montana, don't have the same economic interests as the people who live elsewhere. This is commonly used by conservatives as a way of dividing people's economic interests, as a way of, and actually Jacobin of all places did a really great map in one of their issues. It's fucking on my desk over there, where it literally shows, if you go over the decades, how much more representation you have if you live in a rural state versus how much you have if you live in a state like New York or California. And I just think it's fundamentally wrong in the digital age to assume that based on the geography of where you live, it somehow manages what your fucking politics are going to be. And that goes back to the early stages of America, where if you were a farmer, you were going to be a farmer for fucking ever, and farmers had very aligned politics. And if you were in a rural state, you were farming. But guess what? Big ag owns all of our fucking farmland, and they're fucking farmers everywhere. So it doesn't fucking matter, because it's all corporations and it's all tech controlled everywhere. And so I'm not understanding why you would call yourself like a person who wants to defend the rights of people, but then not support this most fundamental idea of one person, one vote. And if you support the Electoral College, you fundamentally do not support one person having one vote. You want to have a tiered election system.
Yeah. And personally, with someone with my values who does actually value democracy, I find that unfathomable. I find it indefensible to advocate for a system that's not one person, one vote. And again, we're having this discussion. It's relevant too, because recently there's the House bill for DC statehood. DC has more residents than the entire state of Wyoming. But they have no senatorial representation, where Wyoming has 2 senators. And that's the case for multiple of these rural, low-populated states. It's completely whack. And again, there's no reason that the people of Wyoming should have more representation than the people of Washington, D.C. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you don't understand the concept of why one person should have one vote in this country, and why certain people shouldn't have, 30 times more say than another person, depending on your geography of where you happen to be born or happen to be, settled down because of some, some factor out of your control, that's ridiculous. And also, I do take issue with this here at the end when he starts saying, the Democratic Party is so, and of course he's having this conversation with Glenn Beck on a right-wing network. So, obviously we talk about how disgusting the Democratic Party is, but like, guys, you guys listening to the show, what if I went on, Cenk Uygur's show tonight, or Rachel Maddow, and I started, talking about how terrible the Republicans are and how uniquely horrible they are. You guys would accurately point out, well, come on, that's not fair. The problem is the duopoly in general. Both parties perpetuate these problems. Both parties give each other the excuse to continue this behavior. Both parties hand off the power to one another. It's this system. It's not one of the parties. The Democratic and Republican parties are both part of the problem. It's not like one is a good alternative to the other. And to just, let's be honest, the implication on this show, Glenn Beck's show, is that I left the Democratic Party. They're becoming tyrannical. They're becoming authoritarian. But why aren't you saying the same thing about the other party? Obviously, they're just as authoritarian. Obviously, they're just as hell-bent on suppressing people's votes and democracy and all that stuff. Like, are you really saying that the Republican Party is more democratic than? Come on, we live.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the beef, right? Like, I don't give a shit that he went on Glenn Beck's podcast, but why the fuck wouldn't he be like, both parties are fucking corrupt. Both parties are institutionally doing this. When it benefits the Republicans, here's how they behave, and here's how they act. When it benefits the Democrats, here's how they behave, and here's how they act. And then force his audience to actually reckon with it, because what he's actually doing is he's just further entrenching these people in their ideas. And I'm not going to go ahead and say that Glenn doesn't have the right to do that. He has the right to do whatever the fuck he wants. I just think that if he was trying to attain the same political goals that Gavin and I are, that would be just dreadful fucking strategy.
Yes, exactly. And I wanted to bring this up too, because the last time we covered a Twitter spat between these two characters, we actually took Glenn Greenwald's side. And that was relating to the Substack controversy. And Nathan Robinson had tweeted out something basically in support of those calling for Substack, not necessarily to be censored, but he was adding to this chorus of people saying that Substack as a platform is problematic because they platform people like Glenn Greenwald, who, according to others, have problematic beliefs. And of course, while that may be true, lots of people have problematic beliefs. That certainly doesn't mean they should lose their platform on which they express themselves or contribute their journalism. So I just thought that was a dumb position to take. And
especially after he just himself been a victim of censorship because he wrote about Israel. It's like, dude, do you not connect the dots still? Like,
and even if some characters do genuinely have problematic or transphobic beliefs, we should work on,
it's so easy to dismantle those people. Why are we wasting our time calling for them to be taken down when we could just make an article that makes them look so dumb?
And not just dismantle them, but hopefully, come to an understanding. Like, I think we should all agree that the end goal here is to have a society that's more inclusive, that's more understanding, and just censoring people and shutting them out of the conversation is only going to further entrench them in their own potentially regressive beliefs, rather than opening their mind to new beliefs or to engaging in a dialogue with the trans community, for example, which of course is very misunderstood, like we were talking about earlier. Anyway, so the last time we covered one of these, it was Glenn's side that we took, and we were kind of dunking on Nathan for having such a borderline censorious and intellectually lazy opinion. But here I will say that Nathan J. Robinson actually takes the W as far as just the line of logic here. Obviously, he's calling out what we just were as far as the completely ridiculous and anti-democratic notions expressed by Greenwald in that clip. Robinson says it's not repressive and tyrannical to believe voters in rural states should not be worth more. The safeguard is illogical, and it means that two quote unquote rural states with 1 million people would have twice the say of an urban state of 50 million. That's the tyranny you should care about. And also, I think it's worth pointing out that there's a lot of Republicans in a state like California, right? Or New York. What about their fucking right to a vote? It's completely lost in the electoral college system. If you live in California, there's no fucking point in going to vote Republican for president. The state's going to go blue. So if I was a Republican and I lived in California, I would much rather have a one person, one vote than this ridiculous, antiquated electoral college system. It's completely undemocratic.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And I think that the bigger issue that you could take is, of course, there are plenty of problems with the entire framework of the Senate and the House and federalism in general. However, but what I take the most issue is the complete unwillingness to engage with the fact that it is in desperate need of reform, that the Senate system, all of this was done to subvert the threat of democracy, right? This goes back to the Federalist Papers. This was to protect the interests of the minority of the opulent, right? That's literally what they wrote it, spelled it out, Google it. James Madison, protecting, not you, Gavin. I'm just telling people if they're curious. But
something else, sorry.
Yeah, but that's exactly what they were doing. They were concerned with establishing a government that prevented the working class and the working poor from ever rising up past the opulent and taking control. Essentially, it was to permanently bake capitalism into the cake. If we're ever going to overcome that, yes, of course, our constitution is going to need to fundamentally change. So I don't like the rigidness of all that framing that it's somehow dangerous to challenge the fact that our corrupt fucking slave owning aristocratic forefathers wrote a fucking perfect piece of paper that can never be fucking changed. That's so stupid.
And also, people like to say, oh, well, the electoral college exists to protect us from, all the Hollywood, the coastal elites and all the shit.
Oh, yeah, to protect us from Donald Trump, to protect us from fucking Hillary Clinton.
And the electoral college, I'll remind you, has existed since before California was a fucking state. It's not like Thomas Jefferson was sitting there like, oh, we got to be wary of these fucking Silicon Valley elites. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't even know that California fucking existed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so again, I'll reiterate. I'm a big fan and a big admirer of Glenn Greenwald's journalism. His contributions have been immense. You can't take that away from him. And that's why I generally
great, most accomplished investigative journalist of his generation.
And that's why I do think it's kind of annoying and ridiculous when people take, an admittedly problematic or kind of a bad take he has, and they try to use that one thing to tear his entire body of work down, or to say that Glenn Greenwald is like a grifting piece of shit or something like that. Like, I don't agree with that. And like I said, I do have a lot of respect for Glenn Greenwald. And that's why I'm trying to make this plea. It's like, dude, as people that do respect you, don't make us have to defend you, because we're not going to. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you say stupid shit, people are going to call you out. And it's only gonna give more fuel to your detractors to then, not take anything you ever do or say seriously again, because then they can just bring up shit like this and be like, oh, that's the guy that was, went on a crusade to defend Matt Gaetz for some reason. Like, okay, you know what I'm saying? It just gives more ammunition to your haters and your detractors and the people that want to kind of put a blanket on the very real things you do stand for, like increasing data collection state or surveillance state, things that Glenn Greenwald
giving rights for whistleblowers, freeing Assange, all these kinds of things that he's a tremendous advocate for. 100%.
Yeah, it would be like, people wouldn't take our opinions as seriously if they found out that one of us had been involved in something completely, whack and completely destroying of our credibility. People wouldn't take what we say seriously anymore. It's the same thing. If you start saying a bunch of dumb shit, people are going to start taking your actual work a lot less serious. And that's unfortunate when the work you're doing is actually of great importance and
tremendous importance.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think that, if you're listening, Glenn, stop doing that shit. It's dumb as fuck. And being a contrarian and a provocateur should not take precedence over your very important work, which now is not going to be seen or taken seriously by as many people as it would have been.
Yeah. But I guess moving on to the last segment of the day, is that correct? Or do we have one more thing to get to before the book club?
No, I think that's it. I have to piss real quick. So.
Yeah, go for it. I'll talk to everybody about the book club for the day. And then we'll get started. Everybody, if you want to pick up the activity in the chat right now while Gavin's gone, I'm really terrible at talking on the mic by myself. But anyway, we're about to be going over another episode, or I said an episode. We're about to be doing another episode on 2 chapters today from Hate Inc. Gavin and I have been extremely fucking busy. It's been like a hell of a fucking last 3 weeks for the Vanguard. Obviously, it's just like 2 regular fucking guys. We have other shit going on besides the Vanguard that we have like responsibilities for that we have to take care of. So we're a little bit behind on the book club. Normally, we try and get those out for you guys on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we're doing the live streams. But this week, it's just been so hectic with trying to get some higher profile guests to book on the show, as well as some background work that we're doing on some documentary content that'll be coming out for you guys down the road. Unfortunately, that kind of shit just takes a really, really long amount of time when you're working with the budget constraints and the 4 hands, I guess, rather, of me and Gavin. But that being said, lots of good stuff coming down the road. Today, we'll be talking about how controversy in the media really sells, how it creates cash, etc. The sort of WWE wrestling style politics that was just rapidly accelerated during the Trump era, as well as the addictive nature of news consumption and how they sensationalize headlines and make you feel like you're actually compelled to continue, crave news and you crave stories like you would cigarettes. But yeah, so without further ado, Gavin, did I see that you're back?
Yeah, one sec. Sorry. Had to get another glass of water so I don't get too parched on the mic. But yeah, so as Zach was saying, we're going to be pivoting into our book club segment. We're continuing talking about Matt Taibbi's Hate Inc. And this was a fantastic couple of chapters that we tackled this week and that we're going to be discussing, as you talked about, kind of the WWE-ification of politics and also just the addictive nature of the news media.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
So let me pull up these quotes. Do you want to just jump right into it?
Yeah, definitely. We have the quotes in that folder. Tight. Quote 1. So this is interesting. The headline is called "Controversy Creates Cash." That's the title of the chapter. Taibbi writes, in the fall of 2015, when Trump started to rise again in the polls, I started to see reporters on the trail carrying around Mein Kampf in the paranoid style in American politics. They were looking for political parallels in the past. The book they should have been reading was Controversy Creates Cash by former wrestler/wrestling producer Eric Bischoff of now defunct World Championship Wrestling, which was put out of business by Vince McMahon's WWE. Bischoff was himself a famed heel act. His book is a field guide to how wrestling uses provocation and fake narratives to drum up fan interest and make money. Now, before we move on, we need to define some professional wrestling terms for anybody in the audience that's not privy to them. So I don't know, Gavin, do you know what a heel is?
Yeah, that's like the kind of the opponent, right? Like they're always the bad guy, essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the heel is there to piss off the audience. They're there to insult the audience. They're there to piss off the baby face, which is the good guy, right? So WWE and wrestling, it's very archetypal, right? So everything is very clear as day. There's the obvious cheater, the obvious like it's kind of like a Jesse Ventura when he was the heel in the it was like cheat at all costs but always win or something was like what he would always say. It's like very obvious, like I'm the fucking villain, like and then you have the baby face guy, and that's kind of how the like rivalry gets going, and that's how they kind of move the story along, because more so than the acrobatics and the actual wrestling that gets people coming back and really invested in WWE is almost like the soap opera style storylines that get built in the background. And really what was amazing and astonishing about Donald Trump, not for any good reason or positive reason, was the way that he was able to transfer this way of thinking and this emotional kind of I guess like emotional state of people and really harness it into a presidential campaign in politics, because he realized that the media would cover him just as if he was an act.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously it's been pointed out that his extensive experience in reality television and just being a TV star himself, of course, gave him a window into the way to kind of rig the processes in his favor by forcing the media to cover him and by just being such a theatrical personality, unafraid to get in the mud, unafraid to sling shit at his opponents and just act like a buffoon, frankly.
100%, dude. 100%. And so we can go on to our next quote 2. So he's a heel, but he gets the baby face pop from his base, and that's exactly the formula that Donald Trump was using. He was antagonizing everybody, but he was antagonizing everybody that his base hated, right? And that's what's critical. Where he directed his fury was at the people who his base loathed. They just despised the corporate media, the Clintons, MSNBC, all of those things. So when he was giving all that heel energy, he was getting the baby face pop from his base. Every time he was just rude and disgusting and all that kind of shit to the people who those people hated, they loved him even more. They were like, oh, these guys. And that's why he was able to create that mentality that he was fighting for people when he wasn't, because he was just crucifying the people that he they hated, but he wasn't necessarily, but he obviously wasn't doing anything policy wise to benefit their lives materially.
And ingeniously, Trump made the media the heel to his base. You know, to him, he constantly would point out how they were cheating him and covering him unfairly, making them out to ultimately be the real opponent or villain that he was up against, which of course was manifesting in Hillary Clinton. But I think it's worth saying that it's so accurate that he was the baby face to his base, and that he made the media his heel, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And we can go, quote 3 is right up there. Yeah. Trump created a giant free promotion machine. Exactly. So he created a giant free promotion machine in the news media, which seemed never to grasp what he was doing. Either that or it did and it didn't care. I'm pretty sure it's the latter. They were suckers for it, noted Richards, who's a guy that he talks about earlier in the chapter. Not necessarily, I can't remember his first name. They're giving him the oxygen he needs. It feeds right into what he's doing. Exactly. Yeah. What they're doing is they're creating the perfect conditions for a forest fire, and then all Trump has to do is walk in with a match. All he has to do is light the tinder that they've provided him with, and they would do it immediately. They would all go up in flame. He would be on every fucking show. Everybody would be talking about it, and it would be that same fucking formula where his base loves him even more as everybody else is raining shit down on him.
Yeah, and this is an interesting discussion, because sometimes myself and other people have suggested that we need someone on the left to do the same kind of a thing, and that they're unafraid to just do what it takes to get that media attention, you know, force the media to cover you. And if you have to do that by, going out there and doing something kind of scandalous or provocative and hopefully not in a hateful vein like Donald Trump did, but you can still create a kind of a ruckus and force the media to cover you. But the only problem with that approach, as someone who would be trying to court more of like I guess more of a liberal or like lefty demographic, is that people that usually vote Democrat usually have a lot more respect for the media institution. So, if the media is telling those people that they're supposed to hate Bernie Sanders, for example, unfortunately, a lot of people are just going to go along with that because, again, they don't look at the media as a heel or an antagonistic force. They look at it as a institution of respect and honor and all that.
Well,
stuff.
that's changing though. Like 30% of the people
sure.
still feel that way. It's a very low number.
Well, that's true to an extent, but if you think about who votes in a Democratic primary, I don't think that is 30%. True. Yeah, exactly. Because who votes in a Democratic primary is unfortunately not very reflective of the population. You do have a lot of more academic types, more, PMC types that are voting in those primaries. So it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky line to walk, for example, trying to win a Democratic primary as a bold, populist, anti-establishment character like Bernie Sanders. And we talked about how Bernie maybe should have leaned more into those qualities and been more aggressive. But then there is that element which you're up against, which is that a lot of the voters that you unfortunately need, they do trust the media. And if you piss off the media and ruffle their feathers, then they're going to look at that as a sin, not as an alpha male chest beating move like Trump's base did.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's true. There is a financial pulse towards research-free stories. So he makes the point in this chapter of how much the media covered Trump, and it actually makes the point that MSNBC and CNN covered Trump more than even Breitbart or those kinds of like hardcore right-wing publications, right? And he says there's a financial pull towards research-free stories. So writing 1,200 words of jokes about Trump's tweets costs less than sending a reporter undercover in a Mexican maquiladora. But that's not why we need to do the one and not the other, right? And that's the kind of thing that Gavin and I are always talking about the perverse incentives of having capitalism and journalism collide, right? You can't have and this is why we always maintain the same critique of corporate cash in politics and corporate cash in journalism, because it is fundamentally just broken logic to me. The people who try and make the argument that the people who are in power shouldn't be influenced by corporate cash, but the individuals who are supposed to be holding them accountable, they can be completely awash in corporate cash, and that's not a problem. So that's obviously flawed. And of course, Gavin and I are doing commentary right now, right? And of course, that's not us going to a fucking Mexican maquiladora either and reporting on shit. But the fact of the matter is that we're not purporting to be journalists. We're not purporting to be news organizations, and we don't have the fucking budget. And if we did, you can sure as shit imagine that you will see Gavin and I all over the fucking place on the ground and not just sitting behind our microphones.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. And I think it was just so brought to fruition in the Trump era where, I remember reading hundreds and hundreds of articles just like, in moments of downtime, waiting in line at Chipotle or like waiting for the bus or something like that, where, you're just meaningly scrolling through like a Salon article detailing Trump's latest, scandalous, whatever the fuck. And you're just like, why exactly am I reading this? Like, this doesn't really have any bearing on anything around me, but people are sure pissed off. And, I guess I'm mildly entertained to be reading about it. That was kind of just the model of, that kind of like pop journalism that went on hardcore under the Trump era, that clickbaity shit that was just basically existed to perpetuate the outrage machine about Donald Trump, which ironically, all these people that read those articles were the ones that nominally wanted him defeated the most. Although, as Taibbi explains, it was that very behavior, which was exactly what he wanted. He wants you to repeat the fact that he said Hillary Clinton got schlonged. He wants every journalist to go out and, print that 500 times and say it 1,000,000 times and act outraged about it. That way, the attention's on him. Mission accomplished.
100%. No press is bad press.
Yeah.
Bad press is no press.
Yep.
Etc. But this moves on to the second chapter that we're talking about, and it fed magnificently off of what you said, which is that the news is an addictive product, and they market it exactly like that. Like cigarettes, this product can have a profound negative impact on your health. Almost without exception, it will make you lonelier, more anxious, more distrustful of others, and more depressed. And then there's a follow-up quote that I wanted to read before we unpack it.
Quote 6?
Yeah. I think it's the top one. I may have made it quote 5. Oh, there we go. The news is a consumer product. If you take nothing else from this book, please try to remember this. Years ago, I, being Matt Taibbi, trained myself to use this trick. Before clicking on any article, I'd imagine the title of the news outlet emblazoned on a cigarette box or candy wrapper, as in, I'm going to run outside for an MSNBC. And I think that that's hilarious, one, framing, but two, very accurate, right? Because people get cravings for news. People want to feel like, and this is another point that he makes where in this book where he talks about how places like MSNBC hosts like Rachel Maddow made watching their program synonymous with resisting what was happening. And so they were a part of the fight just simply by tuning in, which is completely lazy. You don't actually have to do anything. Just kind of like how us talking on the microphone, this isn't activism, this is commentary. You know what I mean? Right. But they believed in and they thought that they were actually changing the world just by, watching.
Exactly. And to be honest, it kind of reminds me of, back in the day, TYT, when they were always doing their like huge fundraising drives and like, be part of the progressive army, the TYT army. Like, we are the rebel headquarters. Like, this show is the resistance. It was the same thing, just in a slightly different lane, but same shtick, right? By watching fucking TYT or MSNBC, it's not like you are in any way significantly or seriously contributing to a resistance of, government tyranny or anything like that. No, you were just, entertaining yourself. Essentially, it just seemed more virtuous because it's about quote unquote serious things and not about, Kim Kardashian and Kanye West or whatever the fuck all the other serfs are out there reading about that aren't as apparently interested in all this bullshit. But the point is that it's so true that, the media addicts you into coming back because it makes you feel like if you're not there, you're missing out, and that you're, that you're not going to know about the latest breaking story, every 5 seconds on CNN or whatever. Everything is a all caps breaking story. And that, deluge of breaking stories, it makes you feel like, oh shit, if I don't, check CNN, I'm not going to hear about the latest breaking news that's going on that everyone's going to be talking about or whatever. You don't want to feel like you're out of the loop or uninformed on the latest shocking scandal or whatever is going on.
100%, dude. The notion that you are reading the truth and not consuming a product is the first deception of commercial media. It's the same with conservative or liberal brands, or for that matter, we should add anybody that you're seeing for fucking any ideology. In both cases, the product is an attention grabber and a mental stimulus. Look, and here's the reality about this, guys. The fact of the matter is that the media system in this country is so broken, and the channels with which you have to work within in order to access people, that it's sort of become the point that you have to grab people's attention with your headline, which only continues to perpetuate this issue. So one of the things that Gavin and I have thought of doing and tried to do, and credit to Gavin because this was his fucking idea, was to try and make headlines that look like they're fucking smut or like fucking just like stimulating, like, oh god, this is fucking crazy. But then when you look at our conversation, it's like we had the conversation before we put it on there, or the headline is to grab you, and then we have a nuanced conversation about what the fuck is happening. But the algorithm won't promote you. People won't click on your video. You can't even get to the point where having a conversation with anybody unless you participate in this.
Yeah, it's so true.
And that's not that you're deceiving people or not like telling you the truth, but it is the fact, like obviously Gavin and I are telling you to the best of our abilities what the fuck we think, what reason do we have to lie or fucking facilitate anything? We don't. But yeah, it doesn't mean that this isn't technically a product, and we would be remiss if we were telling you guys that we weren't trying to entertain you and make sure that this was engaging as well as informative. That's why we openly call it infotainment. I don't think that's a dig. I think that's important to have in balance with the way that there's infotainment in all facilities or all political arenas besides real left politics if we were to abandon ship.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that our honesty about that fact is what separates us from a lot of the shows that are the problem. If you turn on Fox News or MSNBC, half the time you're presented with opinion commentary, but it's presented as if it's just news. It's, if you just flip on Fox and, Tucker Carlson is on and you're not super plugged in and you don't really know a lot about the media and you're not thinking deeply about this stuff like we are, like Matt Taibbi is writing about, you're just gonna be like, that's the newscaster, he's telling me the news, or Rachel Maddow or whoever, not even realizing that you're completely being sold a partisan agenda, an agenda for corporate America, for all of these things. That's all left out of the picture. So by just being upfront and being honest that we're not an objective news show, and that we're not probably the number one place you should be going to get your objective journalism, that's an honesty that's not even upheld on the quote unquote professional, authoritative, corporate news outlets that the YouTube algorithm promotes in expense of channels like us, which are honest about that.
Yeah, for sure. Next one. If we in the press were being honest with the audience, we would tell them the world is now so complex you cannot ever hope to be truly informed. We can tell you a few broad strokes, but that's it. And I do think that honesty is important. And to give a couple of examples that he's talking about, right, which is to say he's getting granular. He's saying it would be impossible for us, the press, to walk people through tax legislation because it's 2,000 pages. The people who are voting on it aren't voting on or aren't reading it. He gives the example of like Dodd-Frank when he was covering the 2008 crisis, and he would talk about how none of the Congress people at all had any idea what a fucking credit default swap was, what a derivative was. And there would be maybe 2 aides on Capitol Hill that had a vague idea of what was going on. And then it would be all of the lobbyists who knew exactly what was going on, fucking feeding these people with misinformation. And so all you can do as the press and say, this is what I understand to the best of my ability. This is why I think this is shady, but you're not going to be able to get granular all the way down. This is making the average Joe understand what a fucking derivative is and why, these AAA mortgage bonds were not actually AAA mortgage bonds. All you can really say is that they are, and that's not giving people the nuts and bolts that would be required to completely remove any deception if you wanted to include it there.
Yeah, and what's ironic is that the stories that the media does get granular with and doesn't just cover with broad strokes are the ones that are actually unserious drivel. Remember Benghazi, remember Russiagate. These were the stories that were covered with
weapons of mass destruction. But
yeah, weapons of mass. These were the ones that were covered with a magnifying glass, which the media broke down night after night, incessantly trying to explain to their audience the significance of them and why they needed to be freaking out about these things. But in the end, all of those it all just amounted to nothing. It was all a lie, or at least it was maybe a grain of truth, in the case of Russiagate that was just massively expounded upon, a mountain out of a molehill, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's what he gets to in either the next quote, I think. We'll talk about this first. So talk about horrors. Not only is the structure of the modern economy inaccessible to ordinary consumers, it can be inaccessible to the people setting public policy. Often it's beyond the CEOs in relevant industries. AIG sank in part because executives did not understand its own financial products. There are similar complexity issues in almost every field, from energy to medicine to pollution science to nuclear weapons maintenance. This is exactly what we were saying before. And then on quote 10, I believe, oh yeah, this is great. I wanted to get your reaction to this as well. He says, American Psycho was a book about how the American idea of personality is constructed around things we buy. We may be inane monsters inside, but we work hard to have good consumer taste on the surface. Ellis understood that most of us, when we read the news, are really just telling ourselves a story about who we like to think we are when we look in the mirror. And I think that that's so true in how everybody just creates their own media bubble for themselves that kind of underscores the narrative that they want to live. If I'm in the PMC class and I want to feel okay and comfortable in my wealth, but I also want to feel like I'm a humanitarian, I'm going to read Vox News every day and The Atlantic, because it's never going to quite challenge me to the point of I need to reconsider my entire lifestyle. It's going to constantly reassure me that my lifestyle is okay, but it will be like, you know what? I was mesmerized by a fry cook the other day. And like, oh my God, there was a real Annie Lowrey piece. I don't mean to get into a digression. There was a real Annie Lowrey piece who, if you don't know, is a writer for The Atlantic. She wrote this book called I think it was called like Give People Money. She is married to every blue check mark's favorite liberal ass fucking pundit, Ezra Klein, though not that her spouse is something to dig on her. Just to give you an idea of the social circle that this woman is coming from. She wrote about how like she like saw this like fucking prep cook that like mesmerized her, and like was writing this whole piece in The Atlantic about like, oh, like we need like working class dignity and all this kind of shit. Never once mentions the fact that maybe we should raise the fucking minimum wage so that guy doesn't go home to fucking starve.
Yeah, that's so true. And just such an accurate point about how not only does the media, give us the news or the information that we want to see to reaffirm our biases, but it makes us feel better about ourselves in the process. It's giving you that dose of the virtuous or whatever you want to call it that you just described with that article. So not only is it confirming your biases, but it's also, kind of giving you a little bit of a pat on the back too.
Yeah, 100%. Reassuring and reaffirming your belief system.
Yeah.
And then maybe I actually didn't grab the quote that I thought I was going to. But anyway, this is the last quote I think I grabbed. And it just said, in the most recent media appearance, Woodward, being Bob Woodward of Woodward and Bernstein, repeated a common trope in anti-Trump media, one borrowed from the Lewinsky era, i.e. that the investigative walls are closing in, and the walls involve the felony campaign finance charge admitted to by Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. But except the follow-up that Matt Taibbi has to this paragraph is Bob Woodward, when asked, did you look for evidence? He was like, I looked damn hard and I couldn't find it anywhere. But because the media narrative and the way that it infected so many people all the way up to Bob Woodward, and of course Bob Woodward kind of sold out a long time ago. But he was like, I looked for it, and he has obviously a lot of confidence in himself as an investigative journalism. And it's so funny that he was like, no, I couldn't find any evidence of that anywhere. Yet he's so sure that it's out there because of this fucking propaganda, dude. And it affects even people like Bob Woodward, which I think is the point that Matt Taibbi is trying to make here by, you know, kind of inserting somebody with so much clout who just fucking fell on their face.
Oh yeah, and despite the fact that here at the Vanguard and a lot of lefty outlets, you know, we like to go after those who propped up the Russiagate conspiracy, and I still do with 100% veracity because it was bullshit. I will remind people just how intense and how potent the propaganda was, especially at the beginning about Russiagate. Like, it was considered reality, you know, like to deny it was considered just complete conspiratorial lunacy. Like the way
just like it was to deny that they had weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
The exact same thing. The exact same thing.
That's how they manufacture consent.
Yep. But yeah, it was crazy to the extent the media pushed that story, and not just pushed it, but again made you feel like if you were denying it, you were un-American in a sense, or you weren't, being patriotic.
You were a Trump simp. You didn't care about kids in cages, all
or
that
democracy,
kind of horseshit.
Democracy. Yeah, exactly. But meanwhile, even someone like Bob Woodward, who of course broke the Watergate scandal, you know, even he was duped into thinking there was actual merit to this. That's pretty crazy, and not just Woodward, you know, a lot of intelligent, real progressive people bought into it. You know, Bernie Sanders even regurgitated some of that shit. Remember?
Yeah, dude, I do. It was a bummer, and yeah, you're right. And I like I said, you know, just it should have been a lot easier for people to call this shit out. But I do agree that the fucking propaganda was thickly applied, and I don't know. My only thing is, people who have called out shit correctly before, like Michael Moore, fell so hard for it, and it was just like,
I know.
I don't know. That's always a bummer, right? But anyway, we don't have to relive Russiagate. I mean, the people who were correct have been vindicated, essentially.
Oh, 100%, and obviously, mad respect to those of them that
Speaking of Russia. People who are on the correct side of that argument, Matt Taibbi, who we're just wrapping up this book club for. Shout out to Matt. Staked his fucking all of his reputation on that shit because he knew what the fuck what it was about. So anyway, shout out
exactly. And I think it's the fact that people like Michael Moore, who of course did call out the war in Iraq, the fact that they went along for it so easily is just proof of how intense the propaganda was. I also want to say thanks so much for these super chats, Political Chef and Ex Hippie. Really appreciate that.
Hell yeah, guys, appreciate that.
Also, JB Joint's brother, what's up? Fantastic job, fellas. We appreciate that, man. So yeah, thanks so much for the support, guys. Did you want to, before we wrap up, Zach, did you want to quickly do our useful Vanguard?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. We have a new vid on the Vanguard now. It's the useful Vanguardian idiots, or useful Vanguard idiots, whatever the fuck we're talking about now. It's crazy how long this bit has been going. As I said before, we will not be the last ones, or we will be the last ones to make a video about this. Fuck. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and pull it back up. We were not only featured in video, but also the Vanguard was mentioned in the headline. So I mean, I'm just saying, you guys, the elevator buttons, we're riding up to the top floor. Catch on while you can. No, I'm just talking shit, obviously, but it was super exciting to be back on the back featured in. It's always cool. It's cool that they're participating in this joke with us. That's it's odd, but yeah.
No, it's super funny. Yeah, obviously another super big shout out to Matt and Katie. But yeah, we can take a look at this.
And also, where do we need to look this time? I think we should look downwards at like an angle, like we're like, you know,
but we're still on the side.
So so we need to go this way, but we need to be looking down because there's another row that's down further when we're looking at them, and we already did the full side profile, so it needs to be like we're looking down a staircase now.
This is so hard to do. I'm so like directionally.
There we go. Just stay there and press play. There we go.
Exactly.
A lot of people were like, wow, this is terrible journalism and this journalism. It was like, we were just literally speculating. This was a literal fucking clip. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just want to say a huge
actually.
shout out to Matt Taibbi and Katie Halper. We mentioned it last time, but Zach and I are big fans of obviously Taibbi's journalism going back for a while, but also just of Katie Halper on YouTube and of Useful Idiots, the program. They're two of the best voices on the left and two people we really respect. So obviously it's just been a treat and a little bit surreal to see our danky little show featured on their platform again.
Which is why we're going to ride this segment until the wheels come off, until they stop responding to the Vanguard. So anyway, go ahead and play the clip.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is pretty cool too.
They did a good job of it.
In my media career, which is that I want Zach and Gavin from the Vanguard podcast. I want them to become the biggest thing on the internet.
Well, not
Do you hear that, guys? Just saying.
the biggest thing on the internet.
Absolutely, even bigger. Like
No.
Even bigger.
No?
Even bigger, Katie.
Bigger.
Even
They
bigger.
can be our sidekick of a show.
Okay, so it can be Useful Idiots and Friend or Friends.
Friends.
I'm the
But
friend.
only
Check
This
in
I'm
with
the
this.
friend,
See what
Hey, Katie, come
Oh,
on. We
that's
never had
funny.
Rolling
What
Stone
did he say?
propping this up.
they did this week
Right.
because
Yeah.
they did a thing on why we were fired from Rolling Stone,
Yeah.
and then we did a thing watching them,
Right.
watching us,
You ready, guys?
and then they did a thing watching
us.
us, watching them, watching us. So now
You got to
we-
turn
I think
profile
we
so you're
actually
ready
have to
for the
look
shot,
this
Gavin.
way.
If we're
You're
going to
good?
do that thing. So, no, you need to turn the other way. Yeah, then we both need to look this way when we're watching this clip so that it works out well. So anyway.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we should watch the clip, right?
Yeah.
We were on Useful Idiots, bro.
Bro, that was fucking
This is
crazy. So
insane.
for anybody who doesn't
We were
know,
on it.
I and me and Gavin, both of us, have been big fucking fans of Useful Idiots, Matt Taibbi's books.
I'm actually getting confused at this
obviously
point.
Yeah,
we're doing
look,
the
but look
fucking
how well they
Haiti
edited it. Look,
book
it looks
club
like we're
right
listening
now.
to it. You
And
see?
yeah,
Wow.
they fucking,
Looks like we're responding
pulled
to it.
one of our clips reacting to
Did they
Rolling
take-
Stone getting canceled, and they actually reacted to it, and it didn't seem like they hated
Really
it.
well
so that was
edited.
awesome.
Yeah,
We
this
didn't
was
It looks like we're
it.
responding We
It
didn't
was
hate
like
it. Yeah.
us
That's
reacting
right.
to them. It was pretty wild, pretty trippy stuff. And what I'm about to do here is going to make it easier because now it's us looking at them.
Yeah, Gavin, now you got to
looking
turn
at them.
profile like this.
So
like
this
we
is
did
going-
with the- There you
So
go.
we gotta
Yeah.
turn
Joe
profile.
going
We
too
gotta do
far.
both ways.
Yeah, so now, yeah, and I don't know where
This
they'll
was
be next time, but I
crazy,
think
guys.
they'll be a
You
little
guys
bit
watched it
lower.
last night when this
Yeah, they're
episode
usually on the
dropped.
bottom.
Yeah.
We have to look
who it
up
was,
now?
but shout out to whoever hit me up on Twitter.
Yeah, honestly, I can just mute it because we don't need to hear the echo effect. But it is pretty funny how it's now. How many boxes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, I missed it. It's like a lot though.
A lot of boxes, guys. So
Yeah.
cool stuff. Shout out to Useful Idiots podcast. And for more Useful Vanguard Indians, hopefully tune in next week and we'll do this segment again.
Yeah, and that's 16 boxes. So let's try to get it to 200. I'm just. I think it's possible, guys. If you're willing, we're willing. But yeah, huge shout out to Matt and Katie again. Big fans, and it just continues to be awesome to be, part of this joke with you guys. Before we jump off, did want to do another quick shout out to the patrons. Again, that's patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. The link is in the description. You can get access to our Discord if you join, as well as some other exciting benefits, which you can find out about, again, by hitting that link in the description. But yeah, we'd like to shout out our patrons at the beginning and the end of our live streams, just so they know.
And if you hate
how
our
much we
fucking
love them.
show and you think we're terrible for $10, you can come on and talk shit with us.
Yeah, exactly. Our Vanguardian patrons technically do have the right to come on our live streams and say whatever the hell they want to us. Just try not to say anything that would get us demonetized. You know what I'm saying? But-
YouTube, yeah, exactly. Come on,
We
that's
don't-
real.
we don't permit, transphobia and all that stuff. But yeah, all you know what I'm saying? There are
You
some.
can say whatever you
rules.
want about me and Gavin when you're on
Yeah.
here, but you got to
There you
fucking
go.
keep it straight. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. If you missed anything, make sure to subscribe. We'll be re-uploading some clips here shortly, and this live stream itself, obviously, will come back around. So again, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, so that this stream is promoted in the algorithm. But yeah, peace out, guys. We had fun hanging out with you, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, we'll probably be back tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. See you guys
Take care,
then.
guys.